the South Korean allies dropped an untold number of bombs on North Korea, leveled almost every house in some of the cities in North Korea, and they still wouldn't give up. And now part of that is obstinance, part of it is the old Soviet mentality. They're never part of the Soviet Union, but they're part of that communist bloc. And so the same thing with Stalingrad. Now, Stalingrad was great because they were fighting the Nazis. And no matter how much the Nazis bombed Stalingrad, they would not fucking surrender. And so that turned the war around, and it was historically important and wonderful. But also you read into it a little bit more, and Stalin had ordered that if anyone went to surrender, to shoot them in the head. Okay, so now that also happened in North Korea to some degree. Okay, so, but I want to tell you a personal story. My physics teacher in high school was Mr. Pinfield, okay? Now, super random fact, some of you guys that are around my age might remember, his son was Matt Pinfield, who was an MTV host and VJ. Okay, you guys won't remember because you're too young.
This is when MTV played music?
Yes, yes, that's right, all the way back then, okay? So anyway, Mr. Pinfield walked around on a cane because he was in the Korean War and had gotten hurt there.
Yeah.
And one day he's like, oh, Jane, you're Turkish. Let me tell you about the Turks I fought with in Korea. So in Korea, the Americans were there, obviously, South Koreans and the Turks. Those were the three biggest contingents. There were many, many other countries that were represented, but for whatever reason, there was a huge Turkish contingent there because they were part of the Allies fighting back against the communists. And Mr. Pinfield served with the Turks, obviously under the Americans, but alongside the Turks. So he said at one point they were surrounded, the American forces that Mr. Pinfield was with and the Turkish forces by the North Koreans. And the American commander on the scene went to the Turkish commander and said, we're surrounded, we have to surrender. And the Turkish commander said, oh, that's an interesting point, took out his gun and put it to the American commander's head and said, we never surrender. And so there's no surrendering here, we will fight our way out, okay?
Wow.
So now this is Mr. Pinfield telling the story, I don't know, I wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
Now, if that happened today, we'd have an international incident over it, and America would want to invade Turkey, right, over that. So we all, of course, being, I think we were juniors in high school, we were like, so what happened, Mr. Pinfield? He's like, well, I'm here, aren't I?
Oh. Wow.
He said, and I said, but weren't you pissed that the Turkish commander put a gun to the head of your commander, the US commander?
Yeah, I'm putting your life at stake, essentially.
That's right, right, you might have died there, you might have all died. He's like, no, we all thought it was ballsy and amazing, and we fought our way out.
Wow.
That's
super interesting.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
So I was like, wow, okay. So that was the old days. And that's how apparently they rolled back in the day, and everybody was fine. And so here's a more interesting story out of Korea. Steve O's dad was in Korea, and he gets assigned to be the cook for the Turkish soldiers fighting in the Korean War.
No, that's
okay. And the UN keeps giving the Turkish soldiers Spam, but since they're Muslim, they don't eat it because it's ham, right? So they like Mr. O, and they're like, do you want it, Mr. O? He's like, sure, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And he goes and he buries all of the Spam. Okay, he can't eat all that Spam, so he goes and buries it. After the war is over, he goes and takes it out and sells it. Okay, and that is part of how they got the money to move to America.
How amazing is that?
Okay.
That's mind-blowing.
And then it turns out, his son, one of his best friends growing up, is Turkish.
Wow.
He's like, oh my God, how unbelievable.
I thought the way you were going in this story, it was like you just fed Steve Spam from an early age, and Steve just grew like a obsession with Spam. Like, we got Spam in TYT, where's our Spam?
We still have it here.